Hi, thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to do a book review. The book is called The Essential Rumi. So Rumi wrote around the 1200s. It's very interesting to read a poet who has been known for such a long time. It's at least 1,000 years ago. So he has such a reputation that he's still read today. I did a little research on the artificial chat bots, and I said, who are the most popular poets today? And the name Rumi came up. So I was pretty surprised because I thought he was kind of an obscure name, but he's really right in the center there of poets that people are interested in. When you read like a bio of Rumi, they always say he's a Sufi poet. So like, as I am a wide range reader, when I read these kind of tags of the category he is, like I kind of ignore that Sufi poet. I don't really care about Sufi. You know, I'm not against Sufi. I don't let the categories that poets are in affect the way I read the poetry. The poetry should be able to speak for itself regardless of the categories. I shouldn't have to make acceptances for the category to make the poetry work. That's the way I look at poets and literature too. So I'm not talking about Sufi. So I don't want to insult any Sufi files, but I'm not interested in Sufi. I'm interested in poetry. I'm interested in a poet who wrote 1,000 years ago and still read today. And I want to know why, and I want to know if it matters to me. There are many poems in this book. Rumi has different areas that he covers. Some of them are short poems. Some of them are longer poems, multi-page poems. And some of them deal directly with relationship to God. Some deal with practical things. Some deal with how to deal with your life and problems. Many deal with the spirit and the soul. I'm going to read some of the poems that stood out to me this time I read it. One thing I like to do when I read poetry is I often like to write it out, and it helps me to really engage with the words and the poetry. So I'm going to share that too while I recite some of the poems. So I'm going to recite some of these poems and talk about why they worked for me and why they didn't. I will criticize some of these poems, but I'm going to begin with one that I really liked, and this one is about fasting. And I like this because it looks at fasting from a more positive way. As an American, socially, I think that fasting is seen as a difficult thing, dreary, a punishment. It's considered healthy. Maybe it's healthy, maybe it's not. But this one projects the joy of fasting. There's a hidden sweetness in the stomach's emptiness. We're lutes, no more, no less. If the sound box is stuffed full of anything, no music. If the brain and the belly are burning clean with fasting, every moment a new song comes out of the fire. The fog clears and a new energy makes you run up the steps in front of you. Be emptier and cry like reed instruments cry. Emptier, write secrets with reed pen. When you're full of food and drink, an ugly metal statue sits where your spirit should. When you fast, good habits gather like friends who want to help. Fasting is Solomon's ring. Don't give it to some illusion and lose your power. But even if you've lost all will and control, they come back when you fast, like soldiers appearing out of the ground, pennants flying above them. A table descends to your tents. Jesus' table. Expect to see it when you fast. This table spread with other food, better than the broth of cabbages. Listen to the presences inside poems. Let them take you where they will. Follow those private hints and never leave the premises. Who makes these changes? I shoot an arrow right, it lands left. I ride after a deer and find myself chased by a hog. I plot to get what I want and end up in prison. I dig pits to trap others and fall in. I should be suspicious of what I want. In your light, I learn how to love. in your beauty how to make poems. You dance inside my chest where no one sees you, but sometimes I do, and that sight becomes this art. Here's another one, a very practical one. Solomon's crooked crown. Solomon was busy judging others when it was his personal thoughts that were disrupting the community. His crown slid crooked on his head. He put it straight, but the crown went awry again. 8 times this happened. Finally, he began to talk to his headpiece. Why do you keep tilting over my eyes? I have to. When your power loses compassion, I have to show what such a condition looks like. Immediately, Solomon recognized the truth. He knelt and asked for forgiveness. The crown centered itself on his crown. When something goes wrong, accuse yourself first. Even the wisdom of Plato or Solomon can wobble and go blind. Listen when your crown reminds you of what makes you cold towards others as you pamper the greedy energy inside. Here's one that I read and I just did not understand at all. The way of love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. Birds make great sky circles of their freedom. How do they learn it? They fall, and falling, they're given wings. Let your throat song be clear and strong enough to make an emperor fall full length, suppliant at the door. Like that poem went in several different directions. When I read a poem like that it didn't really work for me. I think, first thing I think is that a translation problem, or is that more of a problem with Rumi, or is it a cultural problem between the 1200s and 2023? What's going on there? But there were many like that where I read it and I just had no idea what he was talking about. It's possible I'll understand it later on if I read this again. Okay, here was one story that really made me think, and there are parts of it that I didn't like. It's a multi-page one, so I'm just going to summarize it. And in this one, it's called The King, the Handmaiden, and the Doctor. There was a king who had a great palace, and he was outside his palace, and he saw this woman that he was very attracted to. So he went to the family of the woman, the handmaiden, and he bought her. So she came to his palace, but she was miserable. She was always sick, and he couldn't interact with her because she was always ill. So he hired a doctor to cure the handmaiden. So the doctor came in and he spoke with the handmaiden, and he discovered that she was in love with a goldsmith. That's why she was so sick, because she was depressed, because she was away from her lover. So the king had his people approach the goldsmith and give him a bunch of money so that he would move in the palace. The goldsmith moved into the palace and was reunited with the handmaiden. They were very, very happy to be together again. Then the king asked the doctor to slowly poison the goldsmith. So the doctor began to give small amounts of poison to the goldsmith. The goldsmith got sicker and sicker, and eventually he died. And the handmaiden was just distraught and felt terrible. But after the goldsmith was dead, the king approached the handmaiden, and she was open to the king's advances. And the handmaiden eventually joined with the king. So this was kind of a disturbing story to me. First, one of the thoughts was just abuse of power by the king, being selfish and treating this goldsmith life as if it's nothing. It was very disturbing. One of the things that I first thought was that in America we're kind of taught to be against monarchies, and I thought, God, that's why I don't like kings. But after that, I thought in the United States there's plenty of people who have power and who abuse power just like this king did. So abuse of power can occur in any kind of society. That was one thought. And then also at the end, to me, Rumi kind of excuses the king. And this is how Rumi ends the poem. He says, Don't judge his actions by what you would do. You're not living completely within truth as he is. So Rumi really just, you don't get it. If I was a king, maybe I would get it. But I'm not a king, so it seems cruel. But once again, maybe if I was the king and I had ultimate power, this would be, I probably would, I might even brag about this kind of behavior. It just depends on where you are in the hierarchy. Birdsong brings relief to my longing. I am just as ecstatic as they are, but with nothing to say. Please, universal soul, practice some song or something through me. Here's a great one about freedom. Which is worth more, a crowd of thousands or your own genuine solitude? Freedom or the power over an entire nation? A little while alone in your room will prove more valuable than anything else that could ever be given you. I like this one because I don't understand it, but then something inside of me does understand it. A secret turning in us makes the universe turn. Head unaware of feet and feet head. Neither cares, they keep turning. So that's Rumi, and this is the kind of book where I would like to read it again, maybe in a few years, or read another translator and see how they handled the poems, but I definitely highly rank Rumi as a poet. Thanks for watching.